Thank you very much, Madam, for this opportunity, and thank you very much, colleagues who are listening to this auspicious occasion I've been presented with to discuss and talk about myself. I've accepted this invitation to be on this platform. I've listened and followed this platform for a very long time, and I found it to be one of those very, very educative platforms with good contributions coming from the various colleagues who are on this platform. Your first question to me, obviously, it's about being a political character who could be liked and disliked in equal measure. That's politics. You can never please everybody. You can be good. You can be all things to all people. And I think this obviously is a democratic process, a democratic right for citizens and for colleagues to value the individual in the manner that they see or deem fit. But my background, I was born and bred in Madondo district. I was born on the 23rd September 1970 to a very humble family. Josiah Kasukuwere and Gladys Nimarodza Kasukuwere was my mother. Were 8 of us. We lost one who was supposed to be the 9th. We grew up in a very Christian family. My dad was a member of the Apostolic Faith Church, and so basically we grew up in a polygamous family. It so happened that it was only my mother who had the blessing of having a family. The other two of our mothers, unfortunately, we lost our brothers and sisters that they had brought out of the world when they were just at infant level. We grew up with many other contemporaries, went to local school, primary school called Junior Primary School up to grade 3, where I could proceed because of the war. I left the junior school and then went to Harare. This is 79. And basically for that whole year, I only went to school for 1 term in grade 3. And after that, I was now selling tomatoes, onions. I became virtually a street kid, living in the township of Zarasekwa and Affield. But most of the selling was in Jelnam, Zarasekwa. After that period as well, I then went to Mofu Government School in 1980, very briefly. This was now after our father, who had gone into the liberated zones. Our father had been taken by the war veterans into some of the liberated areas, owing to his massive contribution to the struggle, raising resources, clothing, and so forth for the struggle. They felt he was very exposed should he continue living in Chiunye protected village. We were living in the protected village. And because the war had intensified in 79, Gore Masimbawano, Gore Gukuraund, and so forth, we had to be shipped to Harare. We were pretty young. Our father had got a small property for us in Highfields, 5327. We stayed there, crammed in a room. We had 2 rooms. One room was for a lodger. So basically, it was a tight one. You slept anywhere between the corridors, next to the toilet, under the sink, and so forth, because we also stayed with my sister, who had just been married, and the husband, our mothers, and so forth. It was a tough situation. But that is what I'm sure many families have gone through as well. Our dad was a businessman. He had run successful businesses before, and this age caught up with him. As you would appreciate, most of the African enterprises, they tend to suffer. But when we came in with a decent education, we went to Mofo, like I said, just for a couple of months, and thereafter went back to the rural village and joined junior primary school, where again I proceeded for my grade 4 until I finished my primary school, and then went to start my secondary school at Bradley Institute, which was a Salvation Army Institute. We were taught by the Salvation Army. And after Bradley Institute, in 1988, I worked briefly for Mikrus in Harare as a stock controller. And after that, I was recruited and joined the intelligence department, the president's office. And we started obviously with the training program. And after training, I was deployed to Manicaland province, where I became one of the young officers. And this was during the Renamo banditry attacks and infiltration into Zimbabwe. I was deployed in Manicaland to Mutare, and immediately when I got to Mutare, our bosses immediately dispatched us into the front line, where we saw service in the Pema Valley area, Wande Valley area, and eventually we've been deployed in the what we call the Special Task Force, STF Chimoyo, to basically undertake operations along the Beira corridor, from Beira all the way to Zimbabwe, protecting the pipeline, protecting some of the vital economic installations which were along the way. Quite a lot of learning. It wasn't easy. Quite a number of occasions we came through very difficult situations with the enemy, and yeah, just like anybody in war, some survive, some die. We're lucky that some of us and other comrades were able to survive and be able to share and give testimony to what we went through. And it was during that period as well that we met quite a number of the young officers in the army, who many of them today are in senior leaders of the army, generals and so forth. We worked very closely together in the corridor operations, internal as well as external. So I would say these are some of the tribulations, the challenges, the experiences that shaped my life. And after a couple of years in the service, after the war in Mozambique, after having successfully gone also into Gorongosa and met with Tlakama, disguised as a journalist, I thought it was time to hang up my boots. In this game, you must understand how far you've gone, what's the height of your success. So an intelligence officer will tell you that they need to exploit or have one huge exploit, which you can always talk about later. And once you've done that, you must be prepared to pay giveaway and also step down. And I did exactly that. I was still very young, but I immediately embarked on the business, to set up a business, and I then built my transport company in Mutare. It started off as Migdal Holdings, Mountain Transport, became Mountain Coal, bought commercial transport, bought another company from Chiangwa, Johnson Motor Corporation in Kwekwe, and we spread. We bought UTC Touring Company. We formed a bank, Genesis Bank, became a major shareholder of Mazoe Citrus Estates, Interfresh, became a major shareholder again of Mowe Industries. Quite a significant shares. We held about 5 to 10% shareholding in National Tire Services, and many other investments that we did, pioneered the setting up of the export processing zones. And I would say these are some of the things that I did, shaped by the experiences, the good and bad. When I left the intelligence industry and went into business, this is almost at the same time that the affirmative action movement, the indigenization processes, was topical. And it's an area where I contributed heavily. I felt very strongly that we needed to participate, we needed to drive the growth of our own economy. Myself, Philip Chiangwa, Peter Pamire, Golan Devele, Webster Shamu, and many others came together and gave birth to the Affirmative Action Group. We had felt that the Indigenous Business Development Center, IBDC, had kind of lost its clout. It was set up by Strive Masiwa, John Mapondera, and Clemens Siziba, and then taken over. Kamshinda, then the old men, Ben Mcheche, continued to run it. But we felt strongly that a lot had to be done, and more aggression was required if we were going to bring about the change that we thought would be necessary if the economy was really to move into the hands of the blacks. And by then, I already earned my nickname Tyson for aggression. Tyson, because I think I was kind of a heavy puncher then. We pushed very hard in business to get our own people into the economy. And it's my very strongly held view that we must be masters of our own destiny. We must really control our resources. We must be able to control our own economies, and if need be, expand beyond our own territory, conquer territories beyond our country, and do whatever we can to grow our business and grow our national economy. And in the same vein, I went back to study. Initially, I went to the University of Zimbabwe to study for a diploma in oil strategic studies. This was with quite a lot of the middle leadership of the army, and General Nawashe was my studying partner. We used to drive every day back to his office or to his house, and it was also a time where I learned quite a lot of what had happened during the struggle. He was like a mentor to me, who taught me quite a lot. We did together a diploma in defense and strategic studies. And after that, I then, again, after becoming a member of parliament, minister of youth, enrolled at the University of Zimbabwe for my bachelor's degree in political science. After political science, I successfully also completed a master's in international relations, and again went back to university to study for a law degree, which was cut short in 2017. I came back, pursued my program for quite some time, until again the authorities obviously accused the then Chief Magistrate Guamombe of having brought us into the ministerial precinct to work, yet it was really a University of Zimbabwe, a position that all students were going to be given attachment. I worked alongside other colleagues who have just graduated now, but after some time I left the country when it became very difficult to operate, let alone when you have to deal with trumped-up charges, police charges. It became unnecessary, especially with the pain, with the humiliation, with the imminent danger that there was just more to it than what would meet your eye. And one of the things that really concerned me was interference in my own legal defense. I'd had Jonathan Samkange, and he was brought under tremendous pressure to drop his agency, and there were demonstrations. There was subtle political pressure. There was the PB meeting discussing a similar issue. There was quite high-level interference in why Jonathan Samkange should represent me, and to a point where reluctantly he stepped down. And this was now after the 23rd of September, on the second round. The first one, I was charged and acquitted. Second round, again charged, but during the process, they interfered with the lawyer. But I then had to hire Charles Chinyama, who did the best that he could, and also Advocate Magwaliba, who then took up the case until the case was dismissed. And by then, I was in South Africa. The case was, the charges were quashed and dismissed by the High Court. And the famous locus classicus on the exception charges, it's now quite a very important piece of our legislation, quoted in many of the cases that are brought before the courts. My father, like I said earlier on, was a devout member of the Joan Maranga Apostolic Faith. My father was born in the early 1914. Was unfortunate in that he had his children, that is us and my sisters and so forth, quite late in his life. He was quite advanced now, over 40 years, when he started having a family that was able to survive. My eldest sister was born in 1959. Sarah, she and my general father is born 1914, and your first child is born 1959, which is my sister. He did very well. He was the first man to build a shopping area in the Mount Darwin area, and up to this plate day, it's called Kwajosia. This is a famous place in the Chesa area. He worked very closely with a lot of the new settlers who were coming in from various districts going into Chesa areas. They were opening up the Chesa farming communities. He was there. They would store their goods with him. He had lots of stories of people who came from Gutu, people who came from Wedza, people who came, almost most of the families and people who are settled in the Chesa area passed through his complex. And there are good stories that he would always tell us about the various groupings of people who came in to settle in the Mount Darwin district. Not a lot is talked about him. Obviously, my dad passed on early 2001, 2002, thereabout, 2001, yeah. That's when we lost him. Then we remained with our mom, and we had lost earlier on my father's first wife, died before my dad passed on. And after that, we lost again. After we lost our father, we then lost my Guru Achari, and then my mother last. This is how we are, and this is who we are. Deeply Christian, Chipostori Chiripachiri, and you can't change that. It's a value that I still hold to this day. Alcohol is not a favorite part of me. Cigarettes and so forth, because of their upbringing, we didn't indulge that much in that industry, or let alone make it a hobby. So yes, the schools in the villages were not easy. I remember 1977 when I started going to school, the experiences of the war veterans coming to our home, the landmines that we had to deal with, until that point where we had to be forced into the protected village. This shaped us quite a lot. It toughened us. It made us stronger. To make matters worse, even then, it was, very few people then could afford basics. Just like an ordinary family, we also went through that. In fact, my first set of pair of shoes I got from my brother when I was going for secondary school in 1983. Bradley in 83 when I started my Form 1. That's when I got my first pair of shoes. But this was being passed down to me, including my trunk, which I had to use. Going to boarding school was perhaps one of the best opportunities I had. It made me learn a lot of tactics, learn a lot of how to look after oneself. Ordinarily many people detest their children going for boarding school, but I still think it gives the young people lots of values, lots to learn about, how to look after themselves, washing, ironing, looking after your own bed, and also being able to live in a community with others well, build friendships, study hard, and always, the focus was also built through the education. I would say that one of the key achievements by the Affirmative Action Group was a very sustained defense and protection of black business, which were undersold. At some point, banks, various institutions, I'm talking now about the early 90s to mid and to late, early, we'll call it the decade, 1990 to 2000. There was a sustained campaign by many of the institutions to sell assets belonging to our national business persons, in this case, black business persons. We felt it was racial because it really was hitting, targeting at most of our indigenous entrepreneurs. And one of the key areas where there was a very rich move to stop it was in Blawayo. I recall Sam Nube, Mason Shalo, and obviously joined later on by other colleagues, putting up a huge resistance that saved a lot of black entrepreneurs from going under. It was just one day, the other day, they go to court, and after court, next thing is they've obtained the in order, and the assets are being sold. And I still recall when Strive Masiwa's construction company was also sold, again, under similar circumstances, after he had tried to do a deal to assist him with the late Chambati, FTA Holdings. But there was this viciousness to bring down emerging black enterprises. And the AG would not allow that, would not broke that nonsense. And we did our part to force then Minister of Justice to look at the appointment of the court's sheriff and their attitudes going forward. We just did not end there. Quite a number of financial institutions became much more friendly. And also there was a very concerted effort to ensure that black executives were promoted. We made noise about Standard Bank bringing in white expatriates from London, and that gave rise now to the appointment of young Kosana Moyos and many others who became the CEOs of these largely white-owned banking institutions. The awareness was massive. We traveled across the whole country, mobilizing up to a point where ZANU-PF, and this is including the IBDC, the SWAC, decided therefore to adopt the policy on empowerment, the indigenization of the economy. It became topical, and it was part of their theme. It moved away from just being talk by this group of businessmen to now a national consciousness that allowed for policies and programs to be drawn up by the system and government that ushered in now new enterprises. We saw the banks coming up, Roger Boca, many other black entrepreneurs going to the banking sector. We saw a number of black players taking over institutions, your Court, Dairy Board, and so forth. This was prompted by that concerted effort by the Affirmative Action Group, the IBDC, IBO, and many others, who then became a catalyst for change. Talk of the benefits. Far from it. There is always a belief that because you are a proponent of a certain process, you become immediately a beneficiary. Half the time, they are very smart, Alex, the quiet ones, who make the most out of these opportunities. We know for a fact of a friend who basically built his business by going to the white institutions and saying, "Oh, these guys make a lot of noise. They're not very clever. Rather work with me. I can neutralize them." And it would always happen that you ended up having huge chunks, going to the banking sector, doing all sorts of things at the expense of undermining a policy, but or a process or a campaign. I had built my own business. I had borrowed money like anybody else. I had the reputation of paying back whatever I had borrowed. And that is how I took advantage of opportunities that were in existence and also a good track record as a businessman. Similarly, I think Chiangwa did the same. Pamire did also the same. And various other players did that. And to this day, I think there are now a huge a number of black entrepreneurs, Yoshingim Tassas. These were all activists in the empowerment process who have done very well. Strive Masiwa himself is also somebody who came through these empowerment programs. Even when his license issue became topical, we as AAG took a position. Obviously, it ended up splitting AAG because my good friend Philip Chiangwa was more inclined to support the telecell license in which they were involved at the expense of opening up the market, and we took a different view. Myself, Caleb Shota, and another Mshore youngster, that let's have many more. So we supported Chen Chimtengwen's effort to broaden the players in the mobile phone sector. And so, yeah, then to say we benefited, the two of us, would be unfair and, irresponsible. Many people up to this day continue to flourish because of the policies and programs that we advocated for, and people continue to advocate for from today, even going forward. These are efforts that are made by all people who realized that it was not enough to talk of political independence. We had to move to a stage of bringing about change and bring about black entrepreneurs in the economy. Female entrepreneurs, a lot. I've talked about Mayim Tasa Jane. She became a big player in the sector. It could be Indie. You had Shisanga, Perpetua Shisanga in Manicaland. You had other leaders in Blawa, Matabeleland province. You had in the Midlands province, lots of women. Some are still doing very well to this day, and Amai Dube and so forth. So there has been actually a good number of women entrepreneurs who have taken on the empowerment, and it's encouraging that some of them have become even major miners. They're involved in the mining sector. But she runs now a security company, one of the largest security companies here. It's because of that support that came as a result of black people coming together, fighting together, and ended up with women also being beneficiaries. And the women's sector of the Igbo did a remarkable piece of work, and Zimba Muto and so forth. So my perspective is simple, that the overall involvement of the majority is necessary. Black people had hitherto been denied an opportunity to be players in the business sector, in the economy, and they've come with a bang. Not just blacks, males, but even females. The youth, they are also getting involved, and we should continue to open up the space. Our legislation, most of it is very much colonial, needs to be attended to. And I think this is one area where our legislators have let us down badly. It is about continuously reviewing the laws to keep them in tandem with the aspirations of the majority. How much have we continued to improve our legislation so that it gives rise to more entrepreneurs, more small business persons who are able to operate without being thrown under the bus, being arrested, or being arrested because they are violating the law. Even the mining laws of our nation need serious overhaul. They need to be brought in line with the existing expectations, the aspirations of the majority. Why should our black granite continue to be shipped and the people of a color being the major beneficiaries? In fact, in the past few years, we have seen a very embarrassing trend where people of a color come and take over the resources. And in as much as people talk to me about the foreign investors, I do understand. But I must also say, what about the local investor? So the government must ensure that at the end of the day, we must be proud to bring up our own people who become agents of development in the economy. I think it's important that as citizens have faith in their leaders, citizens go and vote for a leader who has never done anything because they have confidence in them. The same leaders, many a time, do not have confidence in the people who have voted for them. You are voted to be president of a country, but you don't believe that your own people can become presidents of Microsofts of Zimbabwe. We need that paradigm shift. We need people to start understanding that the same amount of faith the voter repossesses in a leader, we expect leaders to also have the same belief and value system that says our people can do it. And they must come as the major beneficiaries of our resources. Let's give them the ability, the advantage to go into platforms of engaging foreign investors on an equal pedestal because the state has given them the wherewithal to do the work. You can't have a situation where you negotiate with foreigners as government. That should be the business of our own business persons. Let them negotiate with business to business. Let's encourage them to be people who will then ensure that the wealth is retained in our country. And this is, to me, a value proposition I'll put on the table anytime. I must have belief. We must have belief in our people. If our people have belief in us, we must also have belief in them. It would be immoral for anybody to think foreigners are special at the expense of your own people. Whatever the foreigner wants, our people must be the first ones to enjoy it. The young people in our country, many of them did not join ZANU-PF or were loyal to ZANU-PF because they wanted to get traction in business. No. The truth of the matter is that that was the only party in town, and that was the party that was responding to the aspirations of our people. And you have to give the President Mugabe's ability to pick an issue immediately, see to it that it is implemented, and then also use it politically for his own ends. ZANU-PF, when the first delegation of entrepreneurs led by Masiwa, Mapondera, the famous Msariri, Tobias Msariri, and others went to meet the president. He said, this is an interesting idea. He called then Dr. Mrerwa, Mayam Juru, and others to say, I want to be with you. We're talking to our black business persons. What should we do? It became imperative that even the IBDC became a key player, including AAG, in the politics of ZANU-PF, because that was necessary to facilitate the aspirations of the new economic order, which President Mugabe and the party were supportive of. Is our politics tribal? Well, I don't need to say much. I'm sure there is some unhealthy tribal features which have emerged, unfortunately, in the past few years. Yes, there is tribalism everywhere, but in Zimbabwe, it was not such a major issue in terms of when President Mugabe, for instance, would appoint cabinet, it was always a minimum of 3 ministers from each province. 3 ministers from each province across the provinces, across the country. You would get 3 ministers from Midlands, 3 ministers from Mashingo, 3 ministers from Mashonaland Central, 3 from Mashonaland East, Manicaland, and then you could continue to look at the various skills and put them in the various places. Yes, of course, there will always be a view that there is tribalism. You really can't rule it out. But I don't think we must allow it to become a major feature that determines how our nation must move forward. It is unfortunate that because of poverty, we have now tended to use tribalism to scale to the next level. If all being said and done, all being equal, we should be having merit. I know for a time when it didn't matter where you came from. And one of the things that you must actually look at is marriage. By the time you ask a lady where she comes from, perhaps you're already going out, and she'll tell you, I come from Mashingo, but she's already pregnant. And does that stop you from marrying that woman? Or does that stop the woman from marrying a given man that they want? No, we must really grow up and get out of this tribal nonsense, which has become a cancer in our society. No tribe must feel excluded. All people must feel that this is their country. People must not be victimized on the basis of their tribe. People must all realize that they are Zimbabweans. You must be Zimbabwean first. You can't be a tribesman. We should be way, way beyond that question of being a tribesman. And the Vele boy must have an equal opportunity as a Shona boy, as a Zulu boy, a Korekore boy, a Dau boy, a guy from Binga must have equal opportunities. And I think, unfortunately, we still have the individuals who think tribes matter. But I think in the near future, we should be able to say what matters is your contribution to your country, not your tribe. Our business is the confluence between business and politics. Yes, there is that unhealthy relationship that has emerged between business at times pandering to politics. Again, it's because we're a developing state and we're still at that stage where uh, our access to resources is determined by who you know. Okay? And this is why politicians still have a hold over business. Would rather have a situation where policies are clear, the empowerment of the people is a clear process, opportunities are clear. You don't need to know a minister for you to access anything. Just imagine a country like China with 1 billion people having all got to go and queue in Beijing to know a given minister for them to access an opportunity to build a road. It would be a disaster. But in our country, you can't build a road without somebody ready to say, I'm here. So, and unfortunately, we also have a political class which is now in competition with businesses. You have a class of politicians, and I don't want to exclude myself, politicians who become businessmen when they're in office, as opposed to a businessman who becomes a politician. And both become dangerous in a way because they want to use access to power to advantage their institutions at the expense of a fair trading environment. This kind of uh, confluence which has emerged between business and politics is sad. And I think every time you know who is the blue-eyed boy in any given society, in any given sector, because of the closeness to the chefs. And the chefs, half the time, they pride themselves as good business persons because they've become very good bribe takers. And we need really, and honestly speaking, to get out of this. Let's get our legislation, and it is the beginning of empowerment. Get your jurisprudence to be one that is aligned with the aspirations of the people. Let us not overburden the leadership by having them to approve what should ordinarily be done by the district administrator or by the councillor. So you've got this conflation between politics and business, which is quite detrimental to the growth of our national economy and stability going forward. We need to undo that and allow businesses to move on their own. Well, our politics, yes, the clientelism, quite big. Even opposition politicians, I mean, no one stands on their own. They need the third leg to stand. Submit, colleagues, that I was born and bred basically in Mandarin, which to this day is one of the major areas that supports ZANU-PF. I was born with that blood. Did our part at a young age during the struggle for independence. I was also very young, 8, 9. We got that conscientization. We got to know much more. And after that, after school, obviously after independence, we became very active in the youth programs at a very tender age. When Simba Makon was Minister of Youth in Maimjuru, and up to a point where we had youth brigades which were quite vibrant, doing agricultural projects, gardening, and so forth. And after that, joined the president's office and got to understand the state and its operations at a very close level, the politics, what happens in politics, and so forth. And that indeed gave me a very important grounding. From then on, I got to appreciate much more what politics was all about, what is all these issues to do with the party. And I then became, was drafted by the late Boda Gezi, Maimjuru, Nicholas Koche, Chenchim Tengwende, Chris Kuruneri, and others, the late Shindori Chininga, and Komre Manika, and James Makamba to come into the province as chairman of the youth. I rose at a very young age, around about 28 years old. I was chairman of the Youth Mashona Central Province, served in that capacity for about 2 years, and then thereafter participated, lost an election, by the way, at the Youth Central Committee position initially in 1999, 1998, but by 2001, the youth elected me to become a member of the Politburo as deputy secretary. I was elected. I was not appointed. I was elected by the College of Young People, and they were to re-elect me again to that position across the country in 2004. 2004, I was re-elected, and I served up to 2009 when I stepped down owing to advanced age. And I think it was important, and it's still very important, for leadership in any party to come through and rise within the ranks of the party. An ideological grounding and knowledge of your political party or your bearing should happen correctly if one rises through the ranks. And that's what we did. Yes, come this story of the G40 grouping and so forth. Yes, obviously we're then in the 40 group, but this name comes out of a discussion or an article sponsored by veteran leader Rugare Gumbo, when he says these are G40, these are G4, the G4s, gang of four. And then this was myself, Opam Chinguri, Jonathan Moyo, and Patrick Joao. This was the gang of four. This was the initial grouping that said this gang of four. We used to work the Women's League with us very closely, the ICTs and Moyo, and we described then as the gang of four. But we lost one of our members of the gang of four, Chinguri, when along the way. And then when the slide began within ZANU-PF and the challenges began within ZANU-PF, we then called the Group of 40, the G40s. How does this G40 group come to be? Professor Moyo authored a seminal paper, which I'm still going to encourage that you must read it, where he spoke about the youth dividend, how the new generation of below 40s must play a role in the economy, that it was again young people who were the center of the liberation struggle, and at below 40, 20s and so forth, they fought for the liberation of the country. And his paper argued that it's important if the country and its economy were to succeed, especially the indigenization program, the land reform program, that at the core and center of our economic revolution be young people. So he has identified a generational cohort and said these young people at 40 and so forth should play an important role in driving the economic growth of the country. And at that time, I was also Minister of Youth Development, Indigenization, and Economic Empowerment. So it happened, it became like coincidence that people felt that it meant to just a few people. No, it was an approach which sought to say this generation must identify its call, must identify its cause, and must do whatever it can to make sure that the economy becomes its launchpad, becomes its area of focus, and we attend to that seriously. And because of disagreements and some of the, perhaps I would say, inability to stomach some of these groupings emerging in the party, it became a toxic fight, and it should not have been. It's regrettable that we are where we are, but we should never have allowed ourselves to be divided on the basis of lack of understanding from where should we go to. And I think this is as a result of the party at a national level failing to articulate a coherent succession plan. The thing that brings us to where we are today is lack of a coherent succession plan within ZANU-PF. Hence, it became a free-for-all. It became a violent program because those with power, the muscle to say I can use my muscle to take power, ended up doing so. And this cohort, as I would put it, of young people felt we knew it was not about taking over power per se. It was about encouraging the youth, especially, to become involved in the economy, to become drivers of the economy, to open up opportunities. The STEM programs, programs that were enacted by government in various ministries, public construction, how youngsters must get more land in Ministry of Agriculture, housing, and so forth. This was a comprehensive response to the youth bubble, if I would say it. There is a growing number of young people who need opportunity in our country, but we have not been able to systematically respond to these youngsters and their aspirations. So I want to debunk the myth or debunk the argument that this was done to affect anybody. This was about giving our young people a chance to play a part in the growth of their country. I have alluded earlier on to the lack of a coherent succession plan. The inside game with ZANU-PF was the two factions that were basically at play for a long time. The now Christian Lacoste, which was headed then and to this day by the current president, Comrade Mnangagwa, and the one headed by Comrade Mjuru. These were two competing groupings within the party, but they were basically counterbalancing each other. And President Mugabe, to a large extent, enjoyed the seesaw. Unfortunately, the demise of General Mjuru created a very difficult situation, which saw one grouping becoming more powerful than the others, and basically we're seeing an opportunity of marching all the way to the State House. That's some of the things that we shall discuss in detail later. But President Mugabe was a very solid operator. Um, I, as one of the young operators who worked with him in the twilight of his life, right through to the end, felt that he meant well. He was genuine about the country. He really loved the country. President Mugabe believed in the country, believed in young people. And whether one likes or not, he was extremely intelligent. He was a human being and he had his mistakes and failures. But one thing you can't take away from him was his very, very keen and absolute desire to see young people succeed, to see the black people succeed, to see people having the confidence of running their own economy. He would, on many occasions, tell me, Minister, ensure that you get metallurgists and so forth to come and take over our mines. Let them come and do it. Get them, organize them, and let them do it. He believed that our people could do it. He was a methodical political player, a former teacher. As you know, teachers, one of the things that they know is planning their work. And he did extremely well. Very disciplined, organized, and very clear in whatever his operations were. Why did I hang around the President Mugabe? Why did I earn his trust? I think, to be honest with you, I felt that his retirement had to be graceful. Whatever we would do, we needed to protect his image, we needed to protect his standing, we needed to ensure that he is rested in a manner that will also provide for the successors to rest in the same manner. There are examples of President Kwame Nyerere in Tanzania who retired, Benjamin Mkapa came, the various other presidents, Kikwetes, Ali Hassan Mwinyi, and there was decorum in how we handle our leaders. This succession issue is one where we felt, and I felt, there were some of us were to be loyal to this man to the end. And I don't run away from that fact that I was loyal to him right to the end. I understood where he was coming from. It was also my duty as political commissar to protect his integrity, to protect what he had done for the country, to appreciate. And notwithstanding that, there was massive support for the old men in the country. You can't take that away from him. He was loved by the masses of Zimbabwe. His failures, his problems, you put them aside, but he had this natural connection with the society. And all his policies and programs were in a majority of cases aimed at changing the society for the better. Education programs, what he did for education, no one can deny the fact that Zimbabwe is sitting on a huge treasure of educated men and women. Zimbabwe grew its health sector thanks to Dr. Timothy Stamps. President Mugabe brought about the policy of reconciliation. President Mugabe, even during the difficult times of the internal conflict within Zimbabwe, he had the wisdom of sitting down with his colleague, Dr. Joshua Nkomo, and say, let's bury this madness. This is a moment of madness. Let's build our country. And to the end, I think he did the best that he could. And I want to still submit that as a political party, as leadership, to be honest, we did not do the right thing. The humiliation with which he ended the reign was uncalled for, was uncalled for, was uncalled for. We could have done it differently. We could have done it differently. And because we need to create a standard, we need to be able to ensure that whoever in the office today will live gracefully tomorrow and thereafter be treated with the respect. I would have imagined the situation where the party would have sat down and agreed that the old man is now stepping down and of which me as political commissar, he did confide in me. He said, Kasukuwere, I'm now going. I've done my part. I was ready to organize a gathering, a whole line of people as we saw him through going back to Zimba, another captain taking over the ship of our nation and moving forward. Because we want to create, and we should have created the precedents that becomes the norm in our society. And I hope and trust that one day, on reflection, all of us who did what we did that might have contributed to a different outcome should feel it in their hearts that mistakes were made. And to be honest, we should have done the best for President Araji Mugabe. Tendai, let me reiterate, what I saw in him was a man who genuinely cared for his country. And I and many others thanked him for what he had done, our education, our liberation. He was our hero, whether one likes or not. He was our hero. And when you retire your heroes, do it properly. I'm in exile, and I would be able to answer that question if I was living in Zimbabwe. So the condition that I'm in makes it difficult for me to give you a satisfactory answer. If you're asking for an answer from me, so when you are in my situation, when you've gone through some of the things that I've gone through, when you had your house raided, left for dead, leave your country in circumstances that God knows how you made it. I think it's this question you've posed to me will be answered at some point later in my life. And I think at this point in time, I would rather allow us to pass on this question to the next one. Wow, Tendai, the questions are flowing left, right, and center. But I'll be brief and very quick. I just want to recap a bit on the G40 story. There's no denying that any company, serious companies the world over, once you have 60% of your staff over 40, you are declining. Once you have over 60% of your staff aged over 40 years, you are in decline. And any country whose core staff or civil service is over 40 years and above, and like what we have today, will always be in trouble. It's about time we embrace the young people to become major players in the political affairs, economic affairs, and so forth. So the G40, yes, if I was going to use that, was not against anybody. We have absolute respect. We had respect for all our leaders, those who in the struggle, whatever they did. And the big challenge that still haunts us is, where did we go wrong? One of the teachings that most of the young people understood was that we must respect our leader. And we expected that there is a very thorough way of managing the succession process. But alas, we became victims of that. And I'm sure this is what I also alluded to in my statement a few days ago, that we need to revisit, and again take a check and say, is this how things should be? You've posed again the same question, again to do with Comrade Mnangagwa. Like I've said before, Comrade Mnangagwa was a senior colleague, quite respected in the party. We worked very well with him in various sectors, and some of us actually campaigned hard for him to become the vice president of the country. And like I said in my interview with Trevor Ngube, it was very clear that he had good chances of becoming the next leader of the country, and which obviously did. But what I think did not go wrong is the way it was done, the way we are, what we are, and where we are. We need as leaders perhaps to look at really who surrounds us and how they abuse the influence. And also leaders must have patience. Leaders must have that heart to understand what the next person is thinking about. Honesty is, I think, a prerequisite in leadership. And we did obviously disagree on the method of how President Mugabe should set this. He had to step aside, and it became a bloody affair. It became an issue which started off with when President Mnangagwa, then VP, became vice president. He had everyone's support. It was clear that he was going to come in. But in no time, you had youngsters, the youth, who started writing very disparaging letters against the leader, resolutions being made in provinces, insulting the leadership. There was quite a lot of kufungirana, a lot of makua and so forth, which became very bad. And I think when some of us speak and say, let's retrace our steps, we are doing so genuinely to say there has to be a better way of handling differences in the party. There must always be a better way of handling differences in a country. It's not about forming political parties. It's not about each individual running a tandem of their own. It's about sitting down and saying, where did we go wrong? How do we correct this? If we have to grow as a people and as a country, it's about time we say we have institutions, but how do we make these institutions foolproof to the individual? And how do we improve how we operate our institutions? How do we manage intra-party conflict? How do we manage intra-country conflict? How do we relate to each other, even if you're from the opposition? You're not my enemy. And I think quite a lot of regrettable development did happen. The death of people, opposition members, the ruling party members, during periods of elections. These are some of the issues that must never be allowed to happen again in the country. And I think we must be very bold enough to learn from our past mistakes. These should not be done again. The issues to do with Gukura and Matavele, and again, inability to solve differences. That should not define who we are. What should define us is that spirit of saying, I love my fellow citizen. How do I make the best out of him? How do we find each other? Even when you disagree with them, we must at least be able to say, I've done my part. And what we've done in the past few days and so forth to say, let us find each other. Let's find the solution that brings to an end this kind of conflict in our society. It's unhealthy. It's holding our country back. When we need each other, when we need our citizens beyond our country to be respected and do well, we are fighting. We are displacing ourselves. This can't be. This can't continue to be the way things are handled. We need to have a paradigm shift that will bring about honor, dignity, and respect for our people. Colleagues, without further ado, I think I can still submit that the current situation which faces a plethora of our people who are in South Africa, those who are crossing over the border, requires us all to come together and say, how do we come up with a Zimbabwean solution that stops our people from bleeding, that stops our people from leaving our country to find opportunities outside the country? If we can be able to find solutions to the revisions, why can't we, as citizens of our own country, sit down and find solutions to our own challenges? Home sweet home, certainly, we'll come back home. And that's why we are saying we have issues that must be resolved. We need to remove the toxicity that is in our society. We need to remove the suspicions in our society. Citizens of Zimbabwe, political leaders of Zimbabwe, political players of Zimbabwe, Vanave Zimbabwe must be able to live well with each other. The conditions that face our people in South Africa, I've spoken about it earlier. It's a very, very concerning situation. In my countrywide visits into some areas, be it in restaurants and so forth, I come across young men and women, educated or not, who are here to make a living. In the past few days, it has been very disturbing. Each time I sleep, I think about the stories, the fears that they have. Mkoma, tandidzokera kumusha. Tichafamba sei, tichazvita sei. How will I sustain my family? These are reality. This is a reality check. I met youngsters as far as Cape Town. The moment they saw me, they came out, Mkoma, Tuesday, meaning that they expect the collective leadership of our nation to help find solutions. Indeed, there are pressures that on our neighbors, internally as well, And I think I must admit that we need to fix our own nation. We need ourselves to be at harmony and peace with each other. We need to allow our citizens to also enjoy and stay in the country. Yes, they're in South Africa. They don't want to be here, the majority of them. They want to be back home. But what are we doing to change their circumstances and the circumstances of our country? Perhaps that's the starting point. Yes, we have sanctions on us. Yes, we have challenges of corruption on us. Yes, we have so many things. I will still submit that at some point or the other, we must be brave enough, courageous enough to confront this challenge and say, let's fix our country. Let our country be a paradise. Let our country be the heaven where the majority come back. Already those working in the restaurants this week, they don't know how to handle this situation. When you are being asked, give me your ID, who are you, where are you from? We are letting down our people. We are letting down our people. Let's look after our people. This is not it. It's wrong, it remains wrong, it will never be right. Let's do whatever we can to have harmony in our country. Each Zimbabwean must be in harmony with the next one. Let us not do it for ourselves or for myself. Let's do it for our people. I submit and I must accept that many mistakes were made. We can only learn from the mistakes we made. Mistakes are a common occurrence in our lives. But one thing which is not common is remorse and acceptance that we made a mistake. We made a mistake. From the way we handled the Madondo case and her team, the lies that were peddled about the alleged attempt to kill President Mugabe by the Gamma talks, to the rallies, the backwards and forwards. I think we must, and I say so wholeheartedly, I think we let ourselves down. This should not be. We allowed our own organization to be derailed by rumors and lies. We participated not knowing that some of the things that we had to confront were not genuine. I think this marks in my political career a very dark period of insincere politics. We got involved in politics which was primitive, immature. Again, we learn from our mistakes. Mistakes were made. Mistakes were made. We have to accept that these were mistakes. We need to treat our leaders. Once we started on that descent with Madondo, it ended with President Mugabe. And I hope and trust it does not become the norm in our country. We need to have decorum. We need to be able to handle issues differently. These are the growing pains. Mistakes were made, and I think we unreservedly apologize to many who got injured in the process. Their ego, their standing, a lot of things that flew between. I'm sure there are some who have to say much more, but collectively, as part of the leadership, we need to stand up and say, not again. This should not be the way. One of the things we must put together as Zimbabweans now going forward is a dignified treatment of each other. Let's deal with any disagreement, but in a dignified manner. I submit that I'm a Zimbabwean. I did my fair share of mistakes, And many also did their own fair share of mistakes, but I stand before the nation and say, not again. It was wrong, it remains wrong, and all we can say is, let's allow the past to be in the past and not do it again. We stand to ask for forgiveness and say we should not do things this way again. It might have been ZANU-PF, but even at a national level, the main things that went wrong, and that can only present for us a learning curve. So I think the public spats that characterized the later days of our leadership, the removal of President Mugabe in a very, very undignified manner, yeah, we should not have done that. We shouldn't do that. We should not allow Zimbabwe to get into that stage again. Thank you very much. And I want to thank you all, Amani Shamari, for having given me this opportunity. Respectfully so. You have listened to me in all the ranting I've made, in what I've said. Some might please your ears, some might not. Some might misconstrue. I won't attack anybody. I don't intend to. If anybody feels attacked, my apologies again. I only had to share my views, and I had to open up today, uncharacteristic of intelligence officers, but I had to share with you because I found this group to be very profound. You raised very pertinent questions. You treated me with the respect. You raised questions in earnest, and I think I did respond positively and honestly in as much as I could. I want to again say, if I have erred, my apologies, but I've done the best that I can. But once again, thank you very much, Tendai, for this occasion. Thank you very much, the 247 or more members who are on this group. Thank you for listening. And thank you, Zimbabwe. I know you shall listen to this story. I had to speak because I've been asked to speak. I've spoken about myself. I've spoken about my history. I'm just like any one of you. I also come from the poor valleys, ravines in our society. That's where I'm born and bred. I've risen not because I'm clever. I've risen because citizens supported me. I am where I am, and I hope one day, God willing, we shall all work together in the best interest of our country. God bless Zimbabwe. Thank you very much. Each time you're confronted with a challenge, it's always not, if you see a challenge, the solution cannot always be the hammer. The solution cannot always be about forming political parties. The solution cannot always be saying, okay, because I disagree with so and so, now I'm going to do my own thing. It's not about individuals. It's about the collective. And I'm saying so because one would have expected us to say, yeah, just because of this, the next action must be, I must run for president as Kasukuwere and do what I think I should do for myself. If I'm running for president, I'm doing it on behalf of Zimbabweans. I'm doing it because we have a piece of work to do. I'm doing it because there is the collective approval by citizens to say, do it. I'm doing it because there is belief that we can change the things that we have to change. We have an economy that needs to be looked after. We have legacy issues that we must deal with. We have the empowerment of our people that must be looked at. We have the land question. The land must produce. This moonlighting, which continues to haunt us, you can't be a permanent secretary and a farmer at the same time. You've got to choose one. This we must be blunt about. I know many who are in the civil service who have farms, who are also doing work in government. If you want to be a farmer, give the farmer title. Give him the assurance that this farm belongs to them. Let's give them the support, the loans, the tractors to produce on their farms. But give way in that office. Let other young people come. We need mathematicians to come, statisticians to come. We need those who can use computers more efficiently to come. Go and look after the farm. Go and grow tobacco. Let's support those who are on the land, but give an opportunity to those who are coming up. We now have people struggling, holding this area and that area. I'm in business, I'm in farming, I'm a permanent secretary. It's not possible. The so-called G40 is not 4 or 5 people. I've said it's a generational issue. It's many young people, many young women, and so forth. Some are older than Generation 40. I'm 51. Joao is 50-something, getting to 60. Professor Mo is over 60 years. Mzembe is also getting to 60. So it's not just about an age profile or the ringleaders. There's nothing called the ringleader. We have citizen leaders who are in the country, who are in the party, who are everywhere. The issue is we must stop putting each other in these kind of boxes. Let's be people who disagree on the method, but not disagree on what we want to do. In other words, let's not disagree on the principal idea. Maybe let's improve on the methods of how we do things. And I want to disabuse many of us that we should not continue to lock ourselves in boxes. This is Lacoste, this is G40, this is what, this is what. Let an idea which can make our nation flourish come forward. Whether it's coming from a villager in Mavradona, it's coming from a villager in Gwanda, it's coming from a Peace and Growth Point, or it's at Hauna. Whether it's at Sagambe, where the people have come up with a good idea, let's embrace it. Katerere village in Nyanga. Whether it's coming from Gwanda, whether it's coming from Binga, Victoria Falls, Timber Township, the ideas of our Zimbabwean people, big or small, fat or thin, must be embraced, and let's build a better country. You have raised the issue of the National Transitional Authority. It's something that people have talked about. Again, by its nature, power can corrupt, and too much power corrupts absolutely. Lord Acton. I think the idea that Zimbabweans must talk is important. Zimbabweans must find each other. Let's have elections where there is no rancor. Let's have elections where we look at each other and say, it's been a good show. And I think the major question is, let's also not allow ourselves to pander to foreign interests. Let's be original, let's be true to ourselves. Let's have the national interest. And I want to be categorical here. One of the major points of departure between the MDC and ZANU-PF has been our view on the land question. It is a fact that the MDC was formed as a response to the land question. That has been a fatal mistake. And I hope and trust that the leadership of the MDC must move and embrace a national program. Yes, there were mistakes in how it was done. Let's find solutions together. But the centrality of the question of land coming back must never be debated. Should not have given birth to a political entity that would say, we don't agree with this. We should agree that the country belongs to us all, and that this question had to be resolved one way or the other. But that we have now resolved it. Let's bring to finality. Let's allow, therefore, that those who can work the land, let them work the land. I know we have white farmers who have come back on the land. Yes, that is what is there. But give young people an opportunity. Give any citizen who want to participate in agriculture an opportunity. Let's take agriculture as a key factor in our economy. Agriculture and mining are central to our economy. Services, the manufacturing sector come after these. So let's use agriculture to be the engine of growth, self-sustaining, ability to feed our people, ability to ensure that we can send our children to school because of our cotton, beneficiation, generation of energy out of opportunities that we have in agriculture, beef for export. There is a lot that we can do. And let's swarm this little piece called Zimbabwe and make the best out of it. The military action that resulted in the Second Republic, oh yeah, we knew about it. We knew it was coming, and we spoke about it. if you look at some of my articles, I did allude to a coup a long, long way back when I had an exchange, an unpleasant exchange of words with Mchangwa. But yeah, this is what happened. And we all now are seeing the fruits of that position, and ask ourselves, is this what should have happened? Did we overreact? Did we overreach? Did we have to allow the army to get involved in internal politics of a political party? I think I have serious doubts about that. But be that as it may, what requires is for us now to find a way forward that will ensure that the professional soldier stays in the barrack. The politician does the best to upgrade and improve the lives of people. If you can't, get off the way. We don't need anymore to have this extra muscle being deployed to support one person against the other. We need to be clear in terms of our roles and responsibilities. Our constitution is our most important document. The law of our land must be respected. Let's use the law, not force, to get things to happen. We don't need to be saying these things to each other. These are the things we must be knowing. What is right is right. What is wrong. And it's time we retraced our steps and made the necessary corrections. I'm not the only one who's not in Zimbabwe. We are many of us who are out. And obviously, you know that if you land, you might have to answer a few questions, and God knows what will happen. And that's what I've alluded to, that we're too angry with ourselves. We're too angry with ourselves. We need to slow down with each other. Let's play our part to develop the country, not to hound each other into far and foreign lands. It's making us a laughing stock. It's an embarrassing situation to be in South Africa, a former minister, staying here. Each time they meet with you, they say, say, what's happening in Kasukuwere? What's happening in your country? It's not right. It's not right. Self concerns, yes. When your house has been shelled and there's no report, there's nobody arrested for doing it, you can't say it's safe for you. Politics by its nature, like I said, anybody, and I want to quote the famous Zimbabwean lawyer, Dr. Zobo, who says, a lawyer always aspires to be the Chief Justice of his country. Every politician aspires to make a contribution at the highest level in the country. That's the dream of any politician. It's another thing whether you get there, and it's another thing whether the people support you. And admittedly, if the call comes and the nation says, we want you to do the following, who are you to deny a call that comes from the people? Who are you to say, I'm not available? If people think you are available, and you think you have a set of ideas that can unite, develop, and grow the country, it doesn't necessarily mean your aspiration at a personal level will always prevail. No. There will always be other considerations. There will always be other players who are in the game. Free and fair election might yield a different result. But I say ambition should never be criminalized. The fact that people have ambitions is not criminal. Even the current president who's in there today had ambitions, and we all knew he wanted to be president. And I remember him seated next to me and Mam Juru saying, problem. He said to me, we were having a budget speech, and there were just about 2 books. It so happened that the other book was given to Vice President Juru, and the other one was given to me, and Colonel Nagaga was sitting in between. So he grabbed the book from me and says, even funny, GP. So A very interesting question here. Did I steal or misuse funds from indigenization? No, not even a cent. If anybody has a story of me stealing, I'm here. Raise it. I ran a clean operation. I was committed to the empowerment of our people. Millions went into communities in Gwanda. The challenges in Marange. The youth funds were distributed fairly across the country. And there was nobody who had to pay a bribe to get the money to me or to anybody who was close to me. So in that case, I did my part, and I'm proud of it. There is no apology in the letters that I did write. There was no attempt whatsoever to seek readmittance, because I still contend. When was I fired? By who? How and when? Was I ever brought before a disciplinary committee? Did I answer to the charges that were laid against me? These are fundamental questions of a constitutional nature. We need to exhaust that process. We need to exhaust that avenue. What happened? What really happened? So when I make a contribution, I'm saying so because I'm just like but one of the many leaders who know what is also going through many of us. So it's not about seeking a favor, and I'll never, 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 never abandon the majority who are in this hour feeling the pain of being excluded. I know what I'm talking about, and I know the many young people and women, the old and so forth, who to this day are on the receiving end of their colleagues abusing their positions and trying to take an advantage of others. We must stop that. So when we raise it, we want to bring about fairness in society. There are cadres who were retired unfairly in the defense forces and the security services. That should not be the case. And when we raise it, it's not against individuals. The fact that people supported President Mugabe, it was not a crime. We all supported President Mugabe. Let anybody raise their hands if they didn't support President Mugabe until November 2017. So the events that happened thereafter should not be an opportunity to bash those who perhaps thought differently. The statement by Mchongwa, I don't even know what he was responding to. I think Mchongwa suffers from delusions of grandeur. He needs a bit of stability. I think he has some problem, and I dare say that even his leadership must watch him closely. He is easily blown by the wind. He can do things that might end up hurting the institution and those who we think he's serving. He is a greedy character who just does not understand what he's talking about. Mchongwa lacks moral leadership values. Mchongwa does not come across as a stable leader who can make a good contribution to the country, because he's irrational, very selfish, and he's not fit for purpose. To be honest with you, such a spokesman can only benefit the adversaries. He is a disaster of unimaginable proportions. And I'm so sorry to say I'm not one who's always keen to cast aspersions on individuals. But when I read the ranting 3-page letter by Mchongwa, I said, oh my God, he's back to his nonsense. There's a colleague in cabinet who I will not mention his name, but we always used to ask him, when will we be saved from this nonsense? The guy is loquacious. Tendai, I think I've done my part. Thank you very much for the engagement. we can have another discussion. Go through this. If you need me to come back, I'll be available. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. There has been a question that was raised. I said to Tendai I was going to take leave, but thank you. I see there's some more questions, and I'm very happy to engage and take them on. The audio which has just been supplied through courtesy Comrade Tendai from a family who are raising issues to do with the loss of life in Mashonale Central. Admittedly, we lost a number of people, and I did allude to this between the election periods. And I've also said before that we need to put finality to this issue by a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. There must be a commission of inquiry. Who did exactly what? Because there has been a tendency of placing some of the gory things that happened on the shoulders of innocent leaders. And in this case, the issue that has been raised of the Meda family, to an extent, I have relations with the Meda family from Chweshe. But it's been thoroughly investigated by the Zimbabwe Human Rights Organization, and the late, may his soul rest in peace, Dewa, did a thorough analysis of the issue, investigation. The report is there, and the culprits are known. So we need not descend into innuendos, lies, and so forth. Let's investigate exactly what happened, who did what. And my hands are clean, and I'm sure many of the leaders you have mentioned, their hands are also very clean. Admittedly, the loss of life is not an exciting thing, and we need to say never again, never again, never again. Some of the things that you have said about my position being the political commissar, I only became political commissar of the party in 2014. So I can imagine that you are being prompted to say it by somebody at the back, but let's keep focus on the principle question, which is to say, Mash Central, like in other provinces, we lost human beings, and that should not have been done. They have left behind their families on both sides. I've always quoted the example of Ken Nkala, Lemkani Lopasha at Lopani, Ken Nkala and Blawa, and many others, compatriots, citizens who lost their lives senselessly in our inability to resolve conflicts. And that's why I've said it's essential that the conflict management becomes central in how we manage our state and our country. Yes, I'm here. I also escaped a fire, gunshots in my own house. I could be a different story. It could be a different story today. But I will not shy away from the call for peace. I will not run away from the fact that what I went through and what others went through should not be what our nation is known for. So I hear you, I share your concerns, but I think we must have the truth so that at least those who are not responsible are cleared and their names are not dragged in the mud. I built a house in Harare. I hear you call it big. I don't know in comparison to whose. The relationship between the Minister of Local Government and the local councils has been troubled, but in many cases there has been a very smooth flow. Bulawayo city runs very well, independent of the Minister of Local Government. Wange, Victoria Falls, Mutare, Masvingo, the source of the problems has been Harare. And allow me to submit that one of the biggest challenges we did or we made was to remove qualifications on who becomes a civic leader. Previously, you had to own property. and some level of education. At some point, I think when ZANU-PF was losing grip of the urban centers, I remember then they decided to say even a lodger, anybody can just vote in the urban centers. And it therefore removed the responsibility of a ratepayer to make a decision on who becomes his leader, his civic leader. A bona fide ratepayer, somebody who's doing what is expected of them as citizens of a given town, lost that right. It was given, that franchise was given to everybody. What has it done? It has allowed for all sorts and men of characters who come. It's a fact that the city of Harare to this day does not have a child accountant as a councillor, no medical doctor. Probably there's no lawyer in the city of Harare from the councillors. And how do we expect the city to be run professionally when the caliber of people who become councillors is way, way below standards? We're talking about a massive portfolio. City of Harare's assets alone, land and so forth, runs into billions of US dollars. And the board of directors, which is the councillors, the capacity to superintend and manage that portfolio, do they have the capacity? And the tenants' relationship between the minister or from a different political party and local council should not be this hard. By the times we have had to deal with, challenges in terms of the minister and the local authorities. In most of the local authorities, it's all good. But one thing I would decry is the quality and caliber. Let's make a change in that. And let's have people who know what they're doing. So as former minister of local government, yes, there will be lots of attacks, but we did our best. We had good working relations with the local authority leadership across the country. There will be run-ins here and there, but we probably had the best relationships. But I want still to posit that the qualifications are so bad. Conrad, thank you very much for your question. On my house, I built my house. I borrowed money from cabs, and I have plans for that property going forward. I have to make a business decision. I have been under sanctions for a very long time, and the only way I could invest my money was in an asset that I could have control over. As you are aware that some of us can't bank even a cent, locally or internationally. So the only thing one would have to do was to build, and perhaps in my old age, turn into a lodge. So I had to make that decision at the right time and borrowed funds from institutions who supported that. But I also say that there are many properties which have been built in Harare, probably bigger than what you consider my house to be. But it's not the size that should really worry people. It's an investment that I've made in my country. One day I'll not be here, but that property is there. It's a national asset. It is a building we've built in our country. Everywhere in the world, houses are built. Why should we be defined by the size of your house? What is the standard size? There should be a law, therefore, which says when you're building a house, it must not be this big, if that is the intention. Conrad, again, the business are there, but very much under sanctions. Two sets of sanctions. One is the American sanctions, and the not so written ones, the local ones. Commonwealth is operating. We've been operating under sanctions for the past 20 years. We thank our loyal customers who have kept us going. The citrus farm, we've won in the High Court, but we cannot remove the trespasser is still there. He seems to have some backing of some sort, and he has wreaked havoc on about 86 hectares of land of citrus for export. We hope and trust that we will find a resolution one day or the other. But yes, that is what is happening there. Migdal Holdings, we are limping on. We're still running against all the challenges. We're still there. Funds blocked under the Zidera, a couple of millions sitting in the United States of America, the banking sector. That is the nature of the struggle. But we have to make do with the little that we have. We're grateful to those who have supported us through thick and thin. Thank you, Conrad. I really thank you very much for a very good question, and also as a fellow colleague from Mass Central, I take your question very seriously. It means a lot. It means you have been observing, you have been watching, and you have an interest in this debate. We might not have worked very closely together, but just from the set of questions you have posed to me, I really appreciate your concerns. Let me start off by immediately responding to the questions of violence in Mashonaland Central Province, like I did allude to, that the loss of life, whether of one person, is already too much. And I did accept that there were lots of instances, not only in Mass Central, but across the country, which events should not have happened. The level of disagreement, like I again alluded to earlier on, in our nation, requires us to say, let's at any given point try and find each other, more than resort to this kind of death, injury, and so forth that happens. But immediately following on to that, I've also said at one point or the other, I still submit, we need a commission of inquiry, which will be able to pan out exactly who did what. Because perhaps many leaders have been dragged, have been accused, have had their names besmirched because of lack of the truth. Yes, you know, lies run faster than the truth. I hope and trust that this will be done, Conrad, in our home area, in our province, in our wards, in our districts, so that at least we put to bed this unfortunate incident that did happen in the past. Secondly, in my constituency, Mount Darwin, I'll still stand out there and say, we did not lose a life when I was Member of Parliament. Yes, there was incidents here and there of violence, but not in my constituency, which I superintend over. And I'm proud of that. We were able to work well together. Yes, the opposition will claim they were being blocked and so forth, but that's the nature of politics. I wasn't campaigning for the opposition, I was campaigning for my party then. And I bet that the opposition, if they also had been able to campaign like they did in Bulawayo, they did in Harare, they're not given the other party a chance. That's the nature of the unfortunate nature of the contestation that Zimbabwe has gone through. You recall even this question of violence way back when the late, and may his soul rest in peace, Mzorewa, cautioned then the National Constitutional Assembly and ZCTU after they had beaten up a young ZANU-PF youth in Glenview, Glenora area, and he said, let's not go and descend into this arena. And the arena being this violent response in politics. And we lost it. The temperatures, the decorum just went through the roof. But let's flip this coin and talk of a better Zimbabwe. Colleagues, we need a country that is working. We have all to the men who on this program, been witnesses, been to various countries. We have seen what other countries are able to do. How a dust bowl, a desert like Dubai, can turn around and become an oasis, where individually, severally, or collectively, citizens are taking their money, investing in a desert when we even have a better country. We need to have a paradigm shift and start developing our country in the same manner, in the same way South Korea has done. We need a leadership that looks at infant mortality. We need a leadership that looks at the education numbers. How do we systematize our education? How do we improve the skills? How do we combine the psychomotor and the intellectual effort and bring about an engineering service sector that is there for us? How do we locate our people on our surface as well as subsoil assets, our minerals? My dream and vision for a better Zimbabwe is one which delivers for its people, where the health becomes the final arbiter. The quality of hospitals must be such that you don't have to leave your country. You must be sure that if I get injured, I'll be served. We need a country where jobs are there. We need a country bustling with construction, properties, flats. Less bickering, less hatred. Let the churches do their work. Let the children play. Let's have sports facilities for our children. Let the trader enjoy his work. Let the border, the small trader, enjoy his work. Let the farmer produce and not be harassed. Let everybody in their fields of endeavor enjoy what they want to do. We need a country where we laugh with each other, where we empathize with each other, where power is not a source of pain, but a source of pleasure, where success is not defined by how much power you have, but how much hard work you can put into the soil or into your services. We need a country growing. We need a country that catches up with the rest of the world. We can do it. We've done it before, and I have no doubt that Zimbabwe can and will. I pity that we have allowed vengeance, disease, hatred, corruption, ignorance to become the driving or centrifugal part of our country. We need to let that go. Let's look at how we improve on our irrigation systems, how the production in our farms is enhanced, how the teacher in Adire school under training will have a future. Look at the population of cars and roads in Harare, how much it has created a very difficult situation for us. Let's expand our country. There's a lot we can do. We're only 14 million people. Let's cater for each other. Let's replicate success we've seen in South Africa, success we've seen in Rwanda, success we've seen in China, success we've seen in South Korea, Taiwan, you name it, and make Zimbabwe a better country. We should love each other and be at peace with one another. Ndinotenda chose mubvunzo wandabvunzwa namukoma Farai Magau. Ndinotenda chose Magau nenyaya munoziva takambobata pamwe chete tichitaura nyaya takaridzirana runare over this matter, and I know your principled stance in terms of the community share ownership schemes as well as the people of Marange in particular benefiting from these resources. The truth of the matter is we agreed in cabinet when we implemented the Indigenization Economic Empowerment Act for Chapter 1433. We came up with the implementation instruments when we put the law into effect. And we had to be very clear who will benefit and how we're going to do it. In the mining sector, we said 49% must be for the investor or the existing operator who comes in with his equipment and so forth. 51% on the basis of the assets shall be for the indigenous Zimbabweans. The first category would be the communities. We agreed in cabinet on a 10% share to the community, which will be given just on the basis that this is their resource. And this, we did publish instruments to support how the community share ownership trust was going to be operating, chaired by the chief, deputized by the chairperson of the local district authority. The DA will sit in the committee, Minister of Youth will sit in the committee, a whole veteran will sit on the committee, a member of the women ministry will sit in the committee, and a few other people, including a lawyer and a member of the company. This is what we did. This is the legal existing framework on which the community share ownership schemes were developed upon. When the implementation program started, the first company that complied was Zimplats. And we signed all the things that were binding, that were required. 10% is still available, and I did raise this with you, Farai, for the community. We signed $10 million cash check was given to the community, and the Zimba, the Chegutu Zimba Mondorongezi Community Trust, to this day, is one of the most profitable, and its asset base has grown to the extent that they own 33% shareholding in the second largest company involved, Muhuku. And they've spread that program to almost every village in that community. What hurts me to this day was that all these things were overturned at the instance of the new administration. Let me go forward and finish the old story. 10% was for the workers, called Workers' Fund. Another 10% was set aside for the National Investment Trust, or the Sovereign Wealth Fund, which would bring us to 30%. Another 10% was for local entrepreneurs who might want to come in, specialized groupings, and so forth. We then set aside again another 10% for, again, businesses that might want to invest. And I can give an example in Bekita, where even the Tendi Church is a shareholder, alongside Donama Vaire, alongside the Bekita Community Trust, and so forth. So this was the pattern. The Sovereign Wealth Fund, the Sovereign Wealth Fund did a big chunk to secure the resources on behalf or the benefits of the country. And that's why the Sovereign Wealth Fund is actually an act of parliament, and it's there. So this was not a fluke. This was not a joke. But to make it work, I was not working alone. The Minister of Indigenization had to work with the sector ministers. And that is where the big problem came. In the mining sector, when we did Zimplats with Mpofu, 100%. When we did Unki with Mpofu, 100%. When we did some of these major mines with Mpofu, 100%. You know, Comrade Mago, that the Marange story is an untold story. You know that when we launched the Marange Community Share Ownership Scheme, we did bring together all the mining assets that are there, and on top of the 10% shareholding, they said, okay, let's give each company $10 million US. And then the Minister of Mines, and this was in particular Mpaziriho, who said, we need the workers, the model I've given you must exist, but the workers and the communities must be given their piece of land. And I think to this day, there is a piece of ground over 7,000 7,000 square meters or something like that, a very big piece of land, hectares, thereabout, yeah, it should be hectares, that we set aside for the Marange Zemunya community. And that resource is there. and I'm sure you've been dealing with that issue to find the checks that people talk about famously. I can confirm to you that we had a $10 million check which came but was not presented there because powers that be in the system were opposed to the success now of this program. Remember, this is a feeding trough for many other colleagues. This Marange community thing. We gave a check of 10 million US dollars, which was supposed to come from Mbada. Mbada, Air Marshal Mhlanga, was upfront, supportive, and even printed T-shirts for the program. These were stopped by the Minister of Mines, and in particular Mpofu himself directly. He didn't want it to happen. He actually chose to go that very week when we went with President Mugabe to Marange. He flew to Bulawayo, where there was a mining in Daba, presided over by Comrade Joyce Mjuru. He shunned President Mugabe's visit. I sat with the current president, CDF Chiwenga, who is vice president, and I said, guys, the defense forces have an interest in some of the mines. I need you. They said, okay, we'll present the checks. Those checks that were presented were brought by Comrade Machacha. Comrade Machacha is the chairman of those entities where the army has an investment alongside the Chinese. Those checks were from a bank and there were signatures. That can be fake. Who gave me or how would I have known which bank they use? How would I have known which bank account number they have? If you look at those dummy so-called checks, they had numbers and they were signed. Anyway, the new administration, when they took over, they knew this issue and they took $5 million US to Marange. But to be honest with you, there was a lack of sincerity on the part of the mining entities in Marange. The opaqueness, individuals who were benefiting at the expense of the community created problems for us. So yes, President Mugabe was very clear, he wanted it done. And what came out of it? We were embarrassed. Up to this day, I'm embarrassed. And I apologize to the people of Marange for what happened, but the truth shall set us free. One day, we shall discuss this issue openly. But today, I've set the record straight on who did what and how it happened. Midlands Province, most of the community trusts in Midlands are doing extremely well. Go to the Shawani Community Trust, Tongogara Community Trust, the Unkis of this world, the Mimosas of this world, Minister Stando will tell you. What we didn't do was to continue as a government to work together. Some thought this might benefit or give so and so an advantage. Hence, it became now, how do we sabotage this program? Look at Gwanda Community Trust. To this day, they own their shares in Blanket Mine. Blanket Mine is the biggest gold producing company in Zimbabwe. It's owned by the community. They have a big stake. The workers own 10%. Management, they have a 10% stake. That's the missing one. 10% for management. Predominantly, in most of these mines, it was local Zimbabweans. And the employees will be Zimbabweans. So that will be 20%. 10% for the community. That will make it 20%. 10% for the social welfare fund. The national fund. SWU, Sovereign World Fund. 10%. And then we also gave an opportunity for other entities or individuals to buy in. But if you go and look at Gwanda to this day, they're smiling. They have a big fund. The community is worth no less than $5, $6, $7 million. And they can use that money to invest wherever they want. They are shareholders in Blanket Mine. The government is getting a dividend from Blanket Mine. And this is what we did. And to the extent that even these entities said, this is the best way possible. There were studies and reports that were done by the NGO sector, which confirmed actually that this was the way to go. They said Zimbabwe has come up with a strategy, poverty alleviation. Even the fight against sanctions, this could have assisted us. The white owners, today, even the simplest you talk about, is owned predominantly by families and communities in South Africa. Why is it that in Zimbabwe we can't? When the new government came up, the first thing that they did, and I know comrades who hated indigenization like nobody's business, in finance, quickly came up with the Finance Act to undermine indigenization. The Reserve Bank, its hands were not clean either. They didn't want this thing. And up to this day, I don't understand. 2013, I was moved from indigenization. I went to water. What else could I do? The community trust, the youth fund, up to this day, the 2.5% shareholding by the youth in Old Mutual, it still lies there. What is being done? There was money in cabs, over $10 million US cash for the youth. It's still there. What should I do? I'm no longer there. Government must take over programs that work, but don't fight the person and then kill the program.
When you look at how the...
My brother Farai, thank you very much for that very open and important question. I would say the most important question this evening. South Africa, not before South Africa. Let me talk about my escape from the country. When you sleep at home, when you go home after work, you have your security, you are a very important man, and by the time you wake up, you are running for dear life. You have no more security on your own. Before the day ends, you are walking through the bush trying to get help in another foreign country. It humbles you. Yesterday you were a minister. It becomes like a dream. Today you are crossing a border illegally. That on its own is a huge shock. If you can survive that, you can survive anything. Tell you what, it was not easy. Living cars, leaving a house without closing your doors, dashing into the bush, leaving your country and going to a foreign land, being received and not sure where to get the next meal. You are unprepared, you have to run for dear life. Fast forward, the current situation. One of the things I've appreciated about South Africa is the law, the respect of the judiciary. Colleagues, the separation of power is important. Separation of power is important. The Constitution must be respected in totality. Whether it's a defective one or it's a good one, whatever is in the Constitution, we have to be sticklers of the law and respect it. One of the things that South Africa has, vibrant press, vibrant institutions. Political parties can tear each other apart, but it doesn't make them enemies. They remain South Africans. The decorum with which they engage and discuss their issues, they are robust. They tear each other apart mercilessly, but they will give each other the respect. When the president comes, when the president walks into the room, they'll defer and respect him. They are South Africans first. We need to learn, and I've learned a big lesson. To disagree does not mean you hate me. To have a different opinion does not mean you must be condemned to death. To see things differently does not mean you are not a patriot. If anything, our diversity must be our source of strength. And for South Africa, certainly, their diversity is their source of strength. I've observed an economy at work, businessmen doing their work, farmers doing their work. That's why the majority of our people, in their millions, some are here, because at least things are working. Every society will have its own ills and challenges, but broadly, South Africa is on the right course. They have issues that they must attend to. Those are in-house issues that they must deal with. Issues of land, the equity, and so forth. But from a national governance point of view, I wish we could have the same level of toleration. We could have the same level of how we work together. I always say to myself, God has a purpose. And I want to thank you, my brother. You said that earlier on. Maybe if I had gone to a high office from where I stood yesterday, it would have been a disaster. It would have been a big disaster. I needed this climb down. I needed this fall to know how to rise up. I needed this gigantic step down to appreciate what society is, to appreciate what life is, to interact with the men and women in our nation who are trying to do the best under difficult circumstances, to understand, have a feel of what it means when you don't have somebody giving you the favors, you're being saluted and so forth. Just being an ordinary man. I want to say let's prioritize economic growth, economic development, rule of law. Our property rights must be intact. The institutions must operate on their own. Government must do what it must do. Those who provide housing must provide housing on their own. Let's not interfere with each other. And there's no big man syndrome here. It doesn't behove on the president. Tenders will happen, you don't have to ask the president. Roads are being built, you don't have to open them. I've not seen the president open the roads, I don't know. I think he's too busy. But he has not opened anything in the past few years because I think you will collapse if we were to do that because there are too many. Bridges is building. He has just opened a new factory today, this afternoon, producing coronavirus medicines and so forth. That's what we should be doing. But above all, let us stand with each other. I think one of the things about South Africans in their diversity, this country has many tribes, but it is one flag. This country has many religions, but it is one national anthem. This country has many languages, but it is South Africa. We don't have as many languages, tribes as this place, yet we quarrel like nobody's business. I believe, and I still submit, the lessons of South Africa are important. Let's respect our own laws. Let's maybe lead each other, not rule over each other. Ngatitungamirirane kwete kutongana. Ngatinzwirane ngoni. With the poor amongst South Africa has a very vibrant social services grant system that takes care of the poor. They are trying. We can't fail. We can do it. We just must lower the volume down, tune our radios slightly lower, play the music slightly lower, hear each other more. We are one nation, one people, one flag. Let us be united. Differences, South Africa had serious ones. At CODESA, they discussed, we have learned, we have gone to their sites, we have visited, we have discussed, we have had lunches, dinners in very important locations. It's been a learning curve. We must respect them. I have said that there are challenges, but I think we can improve. And I think they are quite eager to support Zimbabwe to grow. They are quite eager to extend their economic muscle for Zimbabwe to be a country that it has always been. There was a standby facility, Pretoria, Harare, Pretoria, Salisbury, economic line. We need to revive that so that at least we can create opportunities for our people to stay in the country. They have had to carry a huge burden, to be frank. A good percentage of our women are giving birth in their province, in the provinces here. And you can see the politicians now have to try and take a lead to ameliorate a situation that could easily get out of hand on xenophobia and so forth. We salute what they're trying to do in managing this situation, and I believe we also can assist them by doing the right things. My honest appeal this evening to the President of Zimbabwe, Mnangagwa, nyika ndiye vanhu vose. Nyika kugarisana zvakanaka. Nyika hakusi kutasurana. We might have disagreed yesterday, but let us be honest. Let's find each other for the common interests of our nation. We're going to be Zimbabweans forever. We shall leave this country and we should leave our country a better place. Mandela left South Africa a better place. We must stop this destruction of ourselves. We speak a lot ill about ourselves. It's time we change it. But that comes from leadership. Somebody must lead and lead us in harmony and unity. Thank you. My brother Conrad, again, thank you very much for quoting two instances, obviously quite separate. The one to do with the Shari and the tweet I made about the seismic shift. And those were two separate incidents. The period you're talking about was no longer marked by a press which was playing fair. Let's be honest there. I think the press was playing a part in advancing a given political narrative. And at times you fully know how some of the mainstream papers would, from Monday to Sunday, just attack individuals. You are right. The press must be free. The press must be independent. The press must not be factional. The press must not get involved in political quarrels. Report fairly. So I believe the brown envelope mentality must stop. The brown envelopes must not be used to drive a narrative in the press. And I think this is what used to happen then. They had taken a position and we ended up with no option, but also to get upset. You're a human being. I apologize. I really, really apologize for losing my cool then. I do remember I lost my cool, my temperature. It's not me. It's not my normal style of doing things. We must respect the press. And I also appeal, maybe you as a senior reporter, a senior journalist, can the press also report objectively? Can the press also respect the individuals? Let's stop playing politics if we're the press. But I tender my apologies if I did offend you. And in fact, I did offend a bit. And I think we should be able to find each other in that regard. Thank you.